A German shepherd brings her dying puppy to a vet in the middle of a raging storm, desperate for help. The vet saves the puppy's life, thinking he's done a good deed, until the dog's owner shows up furious, making terrifying threats. What happens next will blow your mind. This wasn't an accident, and this German shepherd didn't just randomly choose this clinic. She was running from something far more dangerous than anyone could imagine. Now this small-town vet has stumbled into something that could destroy his life, or worse. But here's the incredible part. This intelligent dog may hold the key to everything. Will he risk it all to uncover the shocking truth? And when push comes to shove, who will make it out alive? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. Thunder cracked overhead as Dr. Harrison Blake rubbed his tired eyes, the harsh glare of his desk lamp casting shadows across the pile of unpaid bills scattered before him. The old veterinary clinic, a legacy passed down through 3 generations of his family, creaked and groaned under the assault of the violent storm outside. He picked up another invoice, his heart sinking at the numbers that refused to add up. The ancient X-ray machine needed repairs again, and the laboratory equipment was so outdated it belonged in a museum. A few more months like this, and he'd have to close the doors for good. What would Dad say? Harrison muttered to himself, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The thought of being the Blake who finally failed the family business made his stomach churn. Lightning flashed, illuminating the worn waiting room through his office door. The power flickered ominously, making the old fluorescent lights buzz and stutter. Harrison held his breath, praying the electricity would hold. They'd already lost 2 refrigerators full of vaccines last summer when the ancient wiring had given out. The wind howled outside, driving sheets of rain against the windows. But through the storm's fury, another sound caught his attention. Desperate scratching at the clinic's back door, accompanied by a low whine. Harrison frowned. It wasn't unusual for people to bring emergencies to his door, even at this late hour, but he hadn't heard a car pull up. The scratching came again, more urgent this time. "Hello?" he called out, making his way through the darkened treatment room. No answer, just more scratching. Harrison flipped on the exterior light and peered through the rain-streaked window. His breath caught in his throat. A massive German shepherd stood in the downpour, her thick fur matted and dripping. But it was what she carried that made his heart skip. Clutched carefully in her powerful jaws was a tiny limp puppy. "Oh my God," Harrison whispered, fumbling with the door lock. The moment it opened, the shepherd padded inside, her movements deliberate despite her obvious distress. Her amber eyes locked onto Harrison's with an intelligence that sent a shiver down his spine. With infinite gentleness, she laid her precious burden at his feet. The puppy was barely breathing, its small body broken and bloody. Even at a glance, Harrison could see the telltale signs of vehicle trauma: crushed ribs, possible internal bleeding, one leg twisted at an impossible angle. The mother shepherd, her collar tag identified her as Luna, stepped back just enough to give Harrison room to work, but her eyes never left her puppy. There was something in that gaze that struck him to his core. Not just animal desperation, but a conscious, almost human plea for help. "Okay, girl," Harrison said softly, already shifting into doctor mode as he carefully lifted the injured puppy. "I'll do everything I can." Luna followed close behind as he rushed to the treatment room, her nails clicking on the linoleum floor. The power chose that moment to flicker again, and Harrison muttered a prayer under his breath. He couldn't afford for the electricity to fail, not now. Working quickly but gently, he assessed the puppy's injuries. The situation was grave: massive internal trauma, crushing injuries to the chest, and dangerously low blood pressure. The kind of case that would be challenging even in a state-of-the-art facility, let alone his struggling clinic with its outdated equipment. Luna watched his every move, her body tense but controlled. When he had to draw blood for emergency testing, she didn't interfere, though her muscles quivered with maternal concern. When the puppy whimpered in pain, Luna pressed her nose against her baby's side, with such tender comfort that Harrison felt tears prick at his eyes. "You're one special mom, aren't you?" he murmured, reaching out to briefly touch Luna's wet fur. She leaned into his hand for just a moment, and in that simple gesture, Harrison felt a connection form, a shared determination to save this tiny life. The storm raged on outside as Harrison worked, fighting against time and his equipment's limitations. Every time the lights flickered, his heart would jump, knowing that a power failure now could prove fatal. Luna remained his steady shadow, a quiet presence lending him strength as he pushed his skills to their limit. The next hour passed in a blur of focused intensity. Harrison's hands moved with practiced precision despite his exhaustion, while Luna's unwavering faith in him seemed to fill the room. This wasn't just another emergency case. Something about this mother's trust, her incredible journey through the storm to find help, touched something deep in Harrison's soul. As he worked to stabilize the puppy, Harrison couldn't help but wonder about the circumstances that had brought Luna to his door. No ordinary dog would or could have done what she had tonight. There was more to this story, he was certain of it. But for now, all that mattered was saving her baby, and Harrison was determined not to let either of them down. Harrison sprang into action, gently lifting the injured puppy while Luna followed close behind. In the examination room, the full extent of the injuries became clear under the harsh fluorescent lights. The puppy's breathing was shallow and labored, her small body trembling with shock. "Multiple broken ribs," Harrison murmured, his experienced hands moving carefully over the tiny frame. "Significant internal bleeding." His heart sank as he noted the blue tinge to the puppy's gums, a dangerous sign of poor circulation. Luna positioned herself at the corner of the examination table, her intelligent eyes tracking Harrison's every move. She didn't interfere or show any aggression, but her intense focus never wavered. When Harrison had to draw blood for emergency tests, she merely whined softly, pressing her nose against her puppy's side in comfort. The old blood pressure monitor beeped erratically, its display flickering. Harrison grimaced. He'd been meaning to replace it for months, but there simply hadn't been enough money. Like everything else in the clinic, it was held together with hope and careful maintenance. A quick ultrasound revealed the worst, a ruptured spleen and severe internal bleeding. The puppy needed immediate surgery, or she wouldn't survive the next hour. Harrison's mind automatically calculated the costs: surgical supplies, medications, post-operative care. Money he had no guarantee of ever seeing repaid. For a moment, his business training warred with his heart. The practical voice in his head reminded him of the stack of unpaid bills in his office, the equipment repairs he couldn't afford, the very real possibility of losing the clinic altogether. Thunder crashed outside as Harrison looked at Luna. The shepherd met his gaze steadily, and in her eyes he saw something that stopped his practical considerations cold. There was trust there, and desperate hope, but also something else, an almost human understanding that sent chills down his spine. "This isn't a coincidence, is it, girl?" he said softly. "You came here on purpose." Luna's tail wagged once, slowly, as if in confirmation. Harrison straightened his shoulders. The money didn't matter. It never really had, if he was honest with himself. "Okay, let's save your baby." He moved quickly to prepare for surgery, gathering what supplies he had while setting up the ancient anesthesia machine. Its dials were worn nearly smooth from decades of use, but Harrison knew its quirks by heart. Luna watched intently as he carefully induced anesthesia, her ears pricking forward at her puppy's small whimper. "It's okay," Harrison assured her, surprised by how naturally he spoke to her, as if she could understand every word. "I'll take good care of her." The surgery itself was a delicate balance of skill and improvisation. Harrison's hands remained steady despite his exhaustion as he worked to control the bleeding. The power flickered repeatedly, making him hold his breath each time, knowing a blackout now could be catastrophic. Luna remained statue still in her corner, only her eyes moving as she tracked the procedure. When Harrison had to clamp off a particularly tricky bleeder, her muscles tensed as if she sensed the critical moment. When he successfully tied off the vessel, she relaxed slightly, almost sighing. "You're not like any dog I've ever met," Harrison said during a brief pause to adjust the anesthesia. Luna's ears twitched at his words, but her gaze never left her puppy. The storm continued its assault outside as Harrison worked, rain pounding against the windows, while wind howled through the building's old bones. But inside the surgery suite, time seemed to stand still, narrowed down to the rhythm of the puppy's heartbeat on the ancient monitor and the steady movement of Harrison's hands. An hour passed, then 2. Harrison's back ached from bending over the small patient, but he didn't stop. He repaired the damaged spleen, set the broken ribs, and meticulously checked for any other injuries he might have missed. Through it all, Luna maintained her vigil, as if lending him strength through her unwavering presence. Finally, Harrison stepped back, peeling off his surgical gloves. "We've done all we can," he told Luna softly. "The next 24 hours will be critical, but she's stable for now." Luna rose from her corner for the first time since surgery began. She padded over to Harrison and pressed her head against his leg in what could only be described as a gesture of gratitude. The simple act brought unexpected tears to his eyes. As he began post-operative monitoring, Harrison couldn't shake the feeling that this night was more than a random emergency. Luna's behavior was too purposeful, too intelligent to be coincidence. She hadn't stumbled upon his clinic by chance. She had chosen him, for reasons he didn't yet understand. With the puppy now stable and resting under careful monitoring, Harrison finally had a moment to examine Luna more thoroughly. The German Shepherd remained vigilant beside the recovery kennel, her maternal instincts evident in the way she positioned herself protectively near her offspring. "Let me take a look at you, girl," Harrison said softly, approaching with gentle movements. Luna allowed his examination without protest, though her attention never fully left her puppy. As Harrison ran his hands carefully over her body, checking for any injuries or health issues, his fingers found something unexpected beneath her thick fur, a collar. Parting the fur revealed an expensive leather collar with a polished metal tag. Harrison's heart skipped a beat as he read the engraved name, "Property of Camden Winters." Below that was an address in the wealthy part of town. "Camden Winters?" Harrison whispered, his throat suddenly dry. Everyone in their small Colorado town knew that name. Winters was the prominent real estate developer who had been systematically buying up local properties over the past year. Harrison had just read about him in the newspaper last week. Something about plans for a massive shopping complex that would transform the downtown area. Luna's ears twitched at the name, and Harrison noticed how her muscles tensed slightly. He continued his examination, discovering several older scars beneath her fur and signs of multiple previous pregnancies. Something about those details made him uneasy, especially combined with Luna's unusual behavior and intelligence. "You're not a stray after all," Harrison mused, scratching behind her ears. "But why didn't you go home when your puppy was hurt? Why come here instead?" Luna's only response was to press closer to the recovery kennel where her puppy slept peacefully, her protective posture unwavering. The puppy's breathing had stabilized, and her color was significantly better than when she'd first arrived. Still, she would need careful monitoring and additional treatment over the coming days. Harrison glanced at the clock, 3:30 in the morning. The storm had finally begun to ease outside, though rain still drummed steadily against the windows. He knew he should contact Winters immediately about his dog and the emergency surgery. After all, Luna was technically his property, and the puppy as well by extension. Moving to his office, Harrison looked up Winters' contact information. He found a 24-hour emergency number listed for the developer's business interests. Taking a deep breath, he dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "This had better be important." "Mr. Winters? This is Dr. Harrison Blake from the Blake Veterinary Clinic. I apologize for calling so late, but I have your German Shepherd Luna here at my clinic. She brought in an injured puppy tonight that required emergency surgery. Who authorized you to perform any procedures? Winters cut him off sharply, his tone shifting from annoyed to angry. Harrison blinked, taken aback. Sir, the puppy was critically injured, likely hit by a vehicle. Without immediate surgery, she wouldn't have survived the night. I assumed you'd want— You assumed wrong, Doctor, Winters snapped. That dog is my property. You had no right to perform unauthorized procedures that I'll be expected to pay for. I want both animals returned immediately. Mr. Winters, the puppy just underwent major surgery. She can't be moved right now without risking her recovery. She needs careful monitoring and follow-up care. I don't care about the medical details. Those animals are my property, and I expect them returned first thing in the morning. As for your unauthorized expenses, don't expect payment for services I never requested. Harrison felt his face grow hot. Sir, I was acting to save an animal's life. Any responsible pet owner would want— Let me be very clear, Doctor, Winters interrupted again, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You are interfering with my property without permission. Return both animals by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, or you'll be hearing from my lawyers. Is that understood? Before Harrison could respond, the line went dead. He stood there for a long moment, still holding the phone, trying to process what had just happened. He'd expected gratitude, or at least basic concern for the animal's welfare. Instead, he'd received threats and anger, with Winters referring to Luna and her puppy as mere property. Harrison walked back to the recovery area where Luna lifted her head to watch him approach. Her intelligent eyes seemed to hold a question, and Harrison found himself wondering again about those scars hidden beneath her fur, about her desperate choice to seek help from a stranger rather than return home. Don't worry, he told her softly, kneeling beside the recovery kennel. I'm not sending either of you anywhere until your puppy is fully recovered. Luna's tail wagged slightly as she pressed her head against his hand, as if understanding and appreciating his promise. But Harrison couldn't shake his growing unease about the situation. Why would someone like Camden Winters, with all his wealth and influence, show such callous disregard for his own animals? And why had Luna so clearly chosen not to seek help from her owner? At precisely 8 o'clock the next morning, the clinic's front door burst open with such force that it rattled the waiting room windows. Camden Winters strode in, his expensive suit and commanding presence filling the small space. Behind him followed a burly man with scarred hands and a perpetual scowl, Travis Crenshaw, his well-known associate, who handled problems that needed a rougher touch. Harrison had just finished checking on the puppy's vital signs, which were steadily improving. He emerged from the treatment area to find Winters glaring at him with cold, calculating eyes. Where are my dogs, Doctor? Blake? Winters demanded, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. Mr. Winters, as I explained on the phone, the puppy is in critical condition following major surgery, Harrison said, keeping his tone professional despite his growing unease. Moving her now could seriously compromise her recovery. I don't recall asking for your medical opinion, Winters sneered. What I recall is giving you explicit instructions to have my property ready for collection this morning. Crenshaw moved to peer through the door into the treatment area, his massive frame blocking the light. From inside came a low, warning growl. Luna had spotted him and clearly wasn't happy about his presence. The bill for this unauthorized surgery, Winters continued, pulling a paper from his jacket pocket, is absolutely ridiculous. Did you really think I would pay for procedures I never approved? Harrison stood his ground, though his heart was racing. That puppy would have died without immediate intervention. Any responsible pet owner? Let me make something very clear, Winters cut him off, stepping closer. I don't need lectures about responsibility from a struggling veterinarian who can barely keep his doors open. In fact, I've heard some concerning rumors about health code violations at this clinic. It would be a shame if the health department had to conduct a thorough investigation. The threat hung in the air between them. Harrison had heard similar stories from other business owners in town. Mysterious health violations, surprise inspections, and mounting pressure to sell their properties to Winters Development Company. You're threatening me because I saved a dying animal? Harrison asked, disbelief coloring his voice. I'm reminding you that actions have consequences, Winters replied smoothly. Now Crenshaw will collect my dogs, and we'll forget this unfortunate incident ever happened. Unless you'd prefer to discuss this with my lawyers. Before Harrison could respond, Crenshaw pushed past him into the treatment area. The moment he approached the recovery kennel, Luna's growl became a snarl. The German shepherd positioned herself between the man and her puppy, hackles raised, showing teeth. Luna! Winters barked sharply. Down! But Luna didn't back down. If anything, her protective stance intensified. Harrison watched the interaction with growing confusion. This wasn't normal behavior for a dog toward its owner. Luna showed no recognition or trust toward either man. Instead, her entire body language spoke of fear and defensive aggression. Having trouble controlling your own dog, Mr. Winters? Harrison asked quietly. Winters' face darkened. Crenshaw, handle this. The burly man reached for Luna, but she snapped at his hands, forcing him to jump back. Harrison noticed old scars on Crenshaw's fingers, the kind that came from handling animals roughly over time. That dog's turned vicious, Crenshaw growled. Needs to be taught another lesson. Something in his tone made Harrison's blood run cold. He stepped between Crenshaw and the treatment area door. I can't allow you to remove these animals against medical advice. The puppy needs at least 72 hours of monitoring and care. You can't allow? Winters laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me explain something, Doctor. This town is changing. Progress is coming, whether small-time operations like yours like it or not. Smart business owners understand which way the wind is blowing and sell while they can still get a good price. The stubborn ones. He shrugged. Well, they tend to run into unfortunate difficulties. Is that what happened to Mike's Hardware and the old Anderson place? Harrison asked, thinking of the recent string of businesses that had closed under mysterious circumstances. Progress requires sacrifice, Winters said simply. Remember that when the health inspector visits. Now, about my dogs. Another warning growl from Luna interrupted him. The German shepherd hadn't moved from her protective position, her intelligent eyes fixed on the men with clear distrust. Harrison studied her behavior, pieces starting to click together in his mind. The old scars beneath her fur, her desperate choice to seek help from a stranger rather than return home, the puppy's suspicious injuries, her clear fear of these men. This was about more than just an injured puppy or unpaid vet bills. Luna's behavior suggested something far darker, and Harrison had a sinking feeling he'd stumbled into something much bigger than a simple accident. After Winters and Crenshaw left, Harrison couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was terribly wrong. He returned to the treatment area where Luna lay pressed against her puppy's kennel, her intelligent eyes following his every move. With gentle hands, he began a more thorough examination of the injured pup. This doesn't add up, girl, he murmured, carefully documenting each injury with his phone's camera. The bruising patterns weren't consistent with a vehicle impact. Instead of the typical road rash and scattered trauma he'd expect from a car accident, he found concentrated areas of damage. The broken ribs formed a distinct pattern, as if struck repeatedly with something heavy and cylindrical. Luna whined softly, nudging his hand with her nose. Harrison scratched behind her ears, noting the way she flinched when his fingers brushed certain spots. Parting her thick fur revealed old scars, evidence of previous injuries that had healed poorly without proper medical care. What's really going on at that compound of his? Harrison wondered aloud. The next morning, he drove to the local animal shelter where he volunteered his services once a month. Sarah Martinez, the shelter manager, greeted him with concern in her eyes. Harrison, I was just about to call you, she said, leading him to her cramped office. We got another one this morning. Same injuries as the others. She pulled out a thick file folder and spread photographs across her desk. Harrison's stomach turned as he examined image after image of injured dogs brought in over the past 6 months. The pattern was undeniable. similar bruising, broken bones, and signs of neglect. Most were found near the old logging road that leads to Winter's property, Sarah explained, her voice tight with anger. But we could never prove anything. The police say there's not enough evidence. Harrison showed her the photos from his phone. Luna's puppy has identical injuries. This isn't coincidence. Luna? Sarah's eyes widened. The German Shepherd from Winter's compound? We've gotten calls about barking from up there, but his security never lets anyone pass the gate for welfare checks. Harrison spent the next few hours reviewing shelter records, building a timeline of suspicious injuries. Before leaving, he drove through town, stopping to talk with local business owners. The story was always the same. Winters would make an offer to buy their property, and those who refused faced mounting problems until they were forced to sell. Health code violations appeared out of nowhere, said Mary Chen, owner of the local pharmacy. 3 surprise inspections in 1 month. Then my suppliers started having delivery issues. I had to sell before I lost everything. At the coffee shop, Tom Weber spoke in hushed tones about strange nighttime activities at Winter's compound. Trucks coming and going at all hours. You can hear dogs barking sometimes, lots of them, but nobody can get close enough to investigate. His security makes sure of that. Harrison parked on a hill overlooking Winter's sprawling property. Through binoculars, he could see multiple outbuildings behind the main house, all surrounded by high fences and security cameras. A large truck with blacked-out windows pulled through the gates, heading toward the furthest building. Back at the clinic, Harrison found Luna sitting alert, watching the door. The puppy was showing signs of improvement, already trying to stand despite her injuries. When he approached the kennel, Luna pressed against his legs, as if seeking protection. "You came to me for a reason, didn't you?" he said softly, crouching beside her. "You knew something was wrong up there." Luna's eyes met his, filled with an intelligence that seemed almost human. She hadn't made a single attempt to return to Winter's compound, instead remaining fiercely protective of both her puppy and Harrison himself. Her behavior, combined with the mounting evidence, painted a disturbing picture. The injuries weren't accidents. The puppy hadn't been hit by a car. She had been deliberately hurt. And based on the shelter's records and local rumors, this wasn't an isolated incident. Something sinister was happening at Winter's compound, something that involved multiple dogs and systematic abuse. Harrison gathered his documentation, medical records, photographs, shelter reports, and witness statements. The evidence pointed to an operation far more extensive than anyone had suspected. But proving it would mean going up against one of the most powerful men in town, someone who had already demonstrated his willingness to destroy anyone who stood in his way. Luna pressed closer, her warm presence steady and reassuring. She had risked everything to save her puppy, trusting Harrison when she had every reason to fear humans. Now it was his turn to be brave. "We're going to figure this out," he promised her, his voice firm with newfound determination. "Whatever's happening up there, we're going to stop it." Harrison's investigation led him deeper into disturbing territory. Following an anonymous tip from a former employee of Winter's compound, he parked his truck along the old logging road just before sunset. The secluded location offered a clear view of the compound's rear buildings while keeping him hidden among the trees. As darkness fell, he watched through his binoculars as workers loaded crates into an unmarked truck. The sound of barking echoed across the property, not just from a few dogs, but dozens. When the truck pulled away, Harrison carefully made his way closer to the perimeter fence, staying in the shadows. The stench hit him first. The unmistakable smell of too many animals kept in confined spaces without proper cleaning. His stomach churned as he used his phone to document the rows of outdoor kennels attached to one of the large metal buildings. Purebred dogs of various expensive breeds paced in tiny cages, many showing signs of neglect and injury. Through a partially open door, Harrison could see more cages stacked inside, illuminated by harsh fluorescent lighting. Female dogs, clearly overbred and exhausted, lay listlessly in their small enclosures. This was no legitimate breeding operation. It was a puppy mill. where dogs were treated like machinery, forced to produce litter after litter for profit. "Now I understand," Harrison whispered to himself, thinking of Luna's desperate arrival at his clinic. He recognized the empty kennel where she must have been kept, still marked with her identification number. A loud crash from inside the building drew his attention. Travis Crenshaw's angry voice carried through the night air, followed by the sound of something heavy striking metal and terrified yelping. Harrison's hands shook as he recorded video with his phone, documenting Crenshaw's savage treatment of the animals. Two workers emerged, discussing the events that led to Luna's escape. "That shepherd was always trouble," one said, lighting a cigarette. "Too smart for her own good. When Crenshaw tried to take her latest litter for early shipping, she went crazy. Never seen a dog fight back like that." "Yeah, and look what it got her," the other replied. "He beat that pup so bad I thought it was dead. But Mama Dog wouldn't give up. Somehow broke through the fence during that big storm." Harrison's heart pounded as the pieces fell into place. Luna hadn't randomly fled with her injured puppy. She had orchestrated their escape with deliberate purpose. He remembered her watching him during his monthly visits to the shelter, where he provided free veterinary care. While other dogs cowered or barked, Luna had always studied him intently, her intelligent eyes following his gentle handling of the shelter animals. "She knew," Harrison realized, awe mixing with anger. "She observed me for months, understanding I could help when no one else would." The thought of her calculating mind, her desperate mother's love driving her to seek out the one person she'd seen show consistent compassion, brought tears to his eyes. Making his way back to his truck, Harrison reviewed the damning evidence on his phone. Videos showed clear violations of animal welfare laws, inadequate shelter, lack of medical care, overcrowding, and documented abuse. The footage of Crenshaw's violence would be particularly damaging. When Harrison returned to the clinic late that night, Luna greeted him with knowing eyes. She had been standing guard over her sleeping puppy, but moved to press against his legs as if sensing his emotional turmoil. "You're much smarter than anyone realized," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "You watched me all those times at the shelter, didn't you? Learning who I was, what I stood for." Luna's tail wagged gently as she licked his hand. "You didn't just escape. You chose me specifically because you knew I would help." The German shepherd's eyes held such deep intelligence that Harrison felt humbled by her trust. She had endured months of abuse, protecting her puppies as best she could, while carefully observing and planning. When Crenshaw's violence finally threatened her puppy's life, she had executed a daring escape in the cover of the storm, making her way directly to the one person she believed could save her child. Looking at the recovering puppy, Harrison marveled at the mother's determination. Luna had risked everything, fighting through pain and fear, driven by a desperate need to protect her offspring. She hadn't just found help by chance. She had chosen her ally with calculated precision, placing her trust in the compassion she had witnessed during his shelter visits. "Don't worry," Harrison promised, scratching behind Luna's ears as she leaned against him. "I won't let them hurt any more dogs. We're going to stop this girl. Together." The next morning, Harrison clutched his phone containing the damning evidence as he walked into Winters Development Group's gleaming headquarters. The modern glass building stood in stark contrast to the town's modest storefronts, a physical reminder of Winters' outsized ambitions. The receptionist immediately ushered Harrison into Winters' corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the small town below. Camden Winters sat behind an imposing mahogany desk, his cold eyes following Harrison's every move. "Dr. Blake," Winters said, his voice carrying artificial warmth, "I trust you've reconsidered your position regarding my property." He gestured to a leather chair. Harrison remained standing. "Actually, I came to show you something." He held up his phone, playing the video of Crenshaw's brutality at the puppy mill. "Care to explain this?" The fake smile vanished from Winters' face. He watched the footage in silence, his jaw tightening. When the video ended, he pressed a button on his desk phone. "Cancel my next appointment." I have enough evidence to shut down your entire operation, Harrison said. The authorities will be very interested in the conditions I documented. Winters leaned back in his chair, studying Harrison with calculated intensity. You really have no idea what you're dealing with, do you? He stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. That shopping complex everyone's so worried about? It's just a cover. The real profit comes from my breeding operations that extend far beyond this little town. You mean your illegal puppy mills, Harrison corrected, disgust evident in his voice. Winters turned, a cruel smile playing at his lips. 20 facilities across 3 states. Purebred puppies sold at premium prices to pet stores nationwide. The shopping complex provides the perfect front for moving product and laundering money. He stepped closer to Harrison. Why do you think I've been so aggressive about buying up local properties? Can't have nosy neighbors asking questions. And my clinic? Harrison asked, though he already suspected the answer. A veterinarian with a conscience? Winters scoffed. You were always going to be a problem. Those injured animals would eventually lead you to ask the wrong questions. Which is exactly what happened, isn't it? Luna's intelligence in seeking out Harrison now made even more sense. She hadn't just chosen him for his compassion. She'd recognized he was the one person in town capable of exposing Winters' cruelty. So here's what's going to happen, Winters continued, his tone turning menacing. You're going to delete that video, pack up your failing practice, and leave town. Tonight. In return, I'll ensure you have enough money to start fresh somewhere else. And if I refuse, Winters smiled coldly, then I'll bury you. I own half the town council and have friends in the state medical board. One phone call and your license is suspended pending investigation. Another call and health inspectors find dozens of violations in your clinic. The local paper runs stories about your incompetence. Your reputation will be destroyed so thoroughly that no one will ever trust you to treat their pets again. Harrison's hands clenched into fists. You really think you can intimidate me into silence? Dr. Blake, I've destroyed better men than you for far less. Winters returned to his desk and pulled out a thick envelope. Here's $50,000. Consider it a relocation bonus. Take it and disappear, or watch everything you've worked for turn to ash. The threat hung heavy in the air. Harrison thought of his clinic, his father's legacy, and all the animals who depended on him. Then he thought of Luna, who had risked everything to save her puppy and expose the truth. As if summoned by his thoughts, a low growl emanated from the doorway. Luna stood there, having somehow slipped past the receptionist. Her amber eyes locked onto Winters with fierce intensity as she positioned herself protectively beside Harrison. How did that mutt get in here? Winters demanded, reaching for his phone. She followed me, Harrison said, placing a calming hand on Luna's head. She's quite intelligent, something you never bothered to notice while treating her like property. Luna's presence seemed to unnerve Winters, who kept glancing nervously at the German Shepherd. Her quiet growl continued, a reminder of the consequences of his cruelty. You have until midnight to make your decision, Winters snapped, trying to maintain his composure. Take the money and leave, or face the consequences. Harrison looked down at Luna, drawing strength from her unwavering loyalty. She had chosen him because she believed in his ability to fight back against Winters' corruption. He wouldn't let her down. You're right about one thing, Harrison said quietly. I had no idea what I was dealing with when this started, but now I do. He turned toward the door, Luna moving in perfect sync with him, and I'm not going anywhere. Harrison sat in his darkened clinic, staring at the envelope of money Winters had offered. $50,000 could give him a fresh start somewhere else. He could open a new practice, help other animals, and leave this nightmare behind. The sensible choice was clear. Take the money and run. Luna lay beside his chair, her head resting on his knee. Her puppy slept peacefully in the recovery kennel nearby, healing a little more each day. The German Shepherd's intelligent eyes met his, filled with unwavering trust. "What am I supposed to do, girl?" Harrison whispered, scratching behind her ears. "He'll destroy everything if I stay and fight." Luna suddenly stood up, padding over to the clinic's back door. She scratched at it insistently, looking back at Harrison with urgent purpose. "What is it?" He grabbed his jacket, following her into the cool night air. Luna led him to his car, waiting expectantly. Harrison hesitated. "You want to show me something, don't you?" Luna's bark confirmed his suspicion. He opened the car door and she jumped in without hesitation. Following her directions through subtle head movements and soft whines, Harrison drove them to the outskirts of town. Luna guided him past Winter's known puppy mill to a seemingly abandoned warehouse. "Another facility?" Harrison whispered in horror. Luna's low growl confirmed his fears. Through grimy windows, he could make out rows of cages filled with dogs. The conditions were even worse than the first location. No ventilation, no proper lighting, just suffering animals trapped in darkness. But Luna wasn't finished. Over the next 2 hours, she led Harrison to 3 more hidden facilities scattered across the county. Each location revealed more horrific scenes of animal abuse and neglect. By the time they returned to the clinic, Harrison felt sick to his stomach. The scope of Winter's operation was far greater than he'd imagined. "This is why you chose me, isn't it?" Harrison said softly to Luna. "You knew about all of them. You weren't just trying to save your puppy, you were trying to save them all." Luna pressed against his leg, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of the responsibility he now carried. Each of those dogs was someone's Luna, a thinking, feeling creature trapped in a nightmare of human cruelty. Harrison pulled out his phone, reviewing the evidence he'd gathered. Videos of the abuse, photos of the facilities, documentation of injuries, and financial records showing the money trail. It was enough to expose Winter's entire operation, but going public meant painting a target on his back. He looked at the envelope of money again, then at Luna watching him intently. The choice crystallized in his mind with sudden clarity. Running away might save his practice, but it would condemn hundreds of innocent animals to continued suffering. Every day he remained silent would mean more abuse, more neglect, more pain. "I can't walk away," Harrison said, his voice growing stronger. "Not now. Not after seeing what you showed me." Luna's tail wagged as if she understood. She'd been right to trust him, to believe he would help once he knew the truth. Her faith in his compassion had led her to his clinic that stormy night, and now her intelligence had revealed the full scope of what they were fighting against. Harrison began organizing his evidence, creating detailed files for law enforcement. He included maps marking each facility Luna had shown him, along with time-stamped photos and videos. His hands shook slightly as he worked, but his resolve remained firm. "Winters thinks he can intimidate us into silence," Harrison told Luna as he prepared the documentation. "But he doesn't understand what we're fighting for. This isn't about money or property or even my clinic anymore. It's about doing what's right." Luna settled next to him, her protective presence a reminder that he wasn't facing this battle alone. She'd risked everything to seek his help, displaying remarkable courage and intelligence in her quest to expose the truth. Now it was his turn to show the same courage. Harrison glanced at his father's old veterinary license hanging on the wall. The clinic had always stood for something more than just business. It represented a commitment to helping animals in need. His father had taught him that being a veterinarian meant standing up for creatures who couldn't defend themselves. "We're going to stop him," Harrison promised Luna, his voice filled with quiet determination. "No matter what it costs me personally, we're going to save them all." Luna's soft whine seemed to express both gratitude and concern for the dangerous path ahead. But Harrison had made his choice. He would face whatever consequences came from challenging Winter's criminal empire. The animals trapped in those facilities deserved nothing less than his complete commitment to their freedom. The night wrapped around Harrison's clinic like a dark blanket, broken only by the dim glow of his desk lamp. He was finalizing the evidence files when headlights swept across the windows. 2 car doors slammed outside. Luna's head snapped up, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Harrison's heart pounded as heavy footsteps approached the clinic's entrance. The door burst open, revealing Winters and Crenshaw silhouetted against the darkness. "Time's up, Blake," Winters sneered, his expensive suit out of place in the humble clinic. "We're taking Luna and anything else that might cause problems." Crenshaw moved forward, a gun glinting in his scarred hand. Luna backed away, positioning herself protectively in front of her puppy's kennel. "You can't have her," Harrison said, his voice steady despite his fear. "And you can't hide what you've done anymore." Crenshaw raised the gun, aiming at Luna. "Boss says no loose ends." Harrison didn't think. He moved. In one desperate lunge, he threw himself between Luna and the gun. The shot cracked through the quiet clinic. Searing pain exploded in Harrison's shoulder as he crashed to the floor. Luna launched herself at Crenshaw with a ferocious snarl. Her powerful jaws clamped onto his gun arm, sending the weapon skittering across the floor. Crenshaw howled in pain as Luna's teeth sank deep. Harrison scrambled to his feet, pressing his hand against his bleeding shoulder. He stumbled toward the back office, where his phone lay charging. Behind him, he heard the violent sounds of Luna fighting Crenshaw, buying him precious seconds. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice was barely audible over the chaos. "This is Dr. Harrison Blake at Cedar Grove Veterinary Clinic," he gasped. "I've been shot. There are armed men." A sharp crack interrupted him as Winters appeared in the doorway, holding a red gas can. "Hang up the phone, Doctor." Harrison's blood ran cold as the smell of gasoline filled the air. Winters splashed the fuel around the office, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You should have taken the money," Winters said, striking a match. "Now we'll destroy everything, the evidence, the animals, all of it. Your precious clinic will be nothing but ashes." He dropped the match. Flames erupted instantly, racing along the trail of gasoline. Winters disappeared through the smoke as fire alarms began screaming throughout the building. Harrison's shoulder throbbed, but the sound of frightened animals galvanized him into action. He couldn't leave them to burn. Luna appeared through the thickening smoke, barking urgently. "Lead the way, girl," Harrison coughed, pulling his shirt over his mouth. Luna guided him through the smoke-filled corridors to the kennels. Harrison's heart sank. There weren't just a few animals. Winters had moved over a dozen dogs into the clinic, hiding them where Harrison wouldn't find them during normal business hours. They were evidence of his criminal operation, and now they were all trapped. Working through the pain in his shoulder, Harrison began opening kennels. Luna helped herd the frightened dogs toward the exit while he carried her puppy. The smoke grew thicker, making it harder to breathe. Flames licked up the walls as the fire spread rapidly through the old building. A support beam crashed down behind them, blocking their original exit road. Luna barked, nudging Harrison toward the back door. He could barely see through the smoke, but he trusted her. Together, they guided the pack of terrified dogs through the burning clinic. The heat became intense, singeing Harrison's clothes and hair. His injured shoulder screamed in protest as he lifted dogs over debris, refusing to leave anyone behind. Luna stayed by his side, helping the smaller dogs find safe paths through the chaos. Just when it seemed they wouldn't make it, fresh air hit Harrison's face. They burst out of the back door into the cool night, leading their ragged parade of rescued animals. In the distance, sirens wailed. Harrison collapsed onto the grass, struggling to breathe. Luna pressed against him, whining softly at his injury. Around them, the rescued dogs huddled together, all living proof of Winters' crimes. Harrison wrapped his good arm around Luna, watching his father's clinic burn while red and blue lights approached through the darkness. "We did it, girl," he whispered hoarsely. "We saved them all." Luna licked his face as her puppy curled up beside them, safe at last from the men who had caused them so much pain. Despite the destruction of his clinic, Harrison felt a profound sense of peace. They had chosen what was right over what was easy, and not a single innocent life had been lost. Red and blue lights painted the night sky as police cars and ambulances flooded the area around the smoldering clinic. Harrison sat on the back of an ambulance, wincing as a paramedic cleaned and bandaged his shoulder wound. Luna hadn't left his side, her protective stance unwavering even as chaos swirled around them. "Dr. Blake," Sheriff Martinez approached, notebook in hand. "We need your statement, but first you should know. We caught Winters and Crenshaw trying to flee the scene. They're in custody." Harrison nodded, relief washing over him. "The evidence files from my office." "Already recovered," the sheriff assured him, "and these dogs—" She gestured to the rescued animals being examined by animal control officers. "They're quite a smoking gun." Over the next hour, Harrison detailed everything: the puppy mill discovery, Winters' threats, the pattern of injured animals. Luna sat attentively beside him, occasionally nudging his hand with her nose when his voice wavered from exhaustion. "This goes deeper than we imagined," Sheriff Martinez said, flipping through her notes. "We've already contacted authorities in neighboring counties. Based on your documentation, there are at least 5 more illegal breeding operations connected to Winters." As if understanding the conversation, Luna stood and barked sharply. The sheriff smiled. "Smart girl. She knew exactly what she was doing when she chose you that night." Dawn was breaking when state police investigators arrived. They worked methodically, photographing the rescued dogs and collecting evidence from Harrison's salvage files. Each animal told part of the story: genetic records proving unauthorized breeding, untreated injuries documenting abuse, and registration papers revealing the scope of Winters' operation across 3 counties. "Dr. Blake," a state investigator called out, "we found records of over 200 dogs in Winters' breeding network. Without your evidence in these rescued animals, we might never have uncovered the full extent of his operations." The news spread quickly through the small town. By mid-morning, local residents began arriving at the scene. They brought blankets for the dogs, coffee for the emergency workers, and overwhelming support for Harrison. Mrs. Chen from the bakery, who had also refused to sell her property to Winters, organized a group to help transport the rescued dogs to the county animal shelter. "You stood up to him when no one else would," she told Harrison, pressing a warm cinnamon roll into his good hand. "We should have all done the same." Throughout the day, more evidence emerged. Winters' carefully constructed facade crumbled as investigators uncovered connections to illegal gambling, money laundering, and property fraud. His entire criminal empire had been built on the foundation of the puppy mills, using the illegal breeding operations to funnel money into his legitimate businesses. "The DA is filing multiple felony charges," Sheriff Martinez updated Harrison that afternoon. "Animal cruelty, attempted murder, arson. Winters and Crenshaw won't see freedom for a very long time." Harrison sat in a borrowed office at the animal shelter, Luna's head resting on his lap while her puppy slept nearby. The young dog's recovery had been remarkable, a testament to both modern medicine and a mother's devoted care. "I'd like to adopt them," Harrison told the shelter director. "Officially." "Already working on the paperwork," she smiled. "Though I think they adopted you weeks ago. Have you thought of a name for the puppy?" Harrison looked at the sleeping young dog, remembering how close they'd come to losing her that first night. Despite everything she'd endured, she remained gentle and trusting. "Hope," he said softly. "Her name is Hope." The community's response to the crisis overwhelmed Harrison. Local business owners, grateful for his role in exposing Winters' intimidation tactics, organized a fundraiser to help rebuild the clinic. Veterinarians from neighboring towns offered their facilities while construction was underway. His client base grew as people brought their pets from across the county, wanting to support the doctor who had risked everything to protect innocent animals. 1 month after the fire, Harrison stood in front of his partially rebuilt clinic. The new facility would be larger, with modern equipment and expanded kennels. But more importantly, it would serve as a safe haven for animals in need, a legacy of Luna's desperate gamble that stormy night. Luna pressed against his leg, while Hope bounded playfully around them, her injuries now just fading scars. Harrison knelt between them, scratching behind their ears as they showered him with affectionate licks. "You know," he told them, Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose. Hope barked cheerfully, her tail wagging with endless enthusiasm. Luna's intelligent eyes met Harrison's, filled with the same trust she'd shown when first bringing her injured puppy to his door. In that moment, Harrison understood that healing wasn't just about mending physical wounds. It was about fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves, about standing up against cruelty wherever it appeared. His father's old clinic sign had been salvaged from the fire. Harrison hung it proudly beside the new one, honoring the past while embracing the future. The Blake family practice had evolved into something greater, a symbol of hope for their entire community, proof that one act of courage could ripple outward to touch countless lives. As the autumn sun warmed their faces, Harrison watched Hope playfully chase leaves while Luna maintained her gentle vigil beside him. His shoulder had healed, the clinic was rising anew, and justice had been served. But the real miracle wasn't in the buildings saved or criminals caught. It was in the simple truth that a mother's desperate love had not only saved her puppy, but had transformed an entire community. Harrison Blake, the reluctant hero, had found his true calling. With Luna and Hope by his side, he would continue his father's legacy of healing, now expanded to protect and defend those who needed it most. Together, they were more than doctor and dogs. They were family, bound by courage, compassion, and an unshakable determination to stand against cruelty in all its forms. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.